let's get to color correction. This is an old edit that I had created for one of my old channels, and basically I had to color correct some clips from this to this, for example, which as you can see looks way cleaner. There is the black fade here. The shirt is way better in the second picture. Overall, the brightness and the contrast is way better. You can see how the character sticks from the background that is blurred out, and then also going from this to this, where as you can see the colors are insane compared to this one. And I'll show you live how to do this, and to do this we will use gradient overlays. You can find this in my pack. I have around 18, I'm pretty sure. I found them on Canva and I just use them all. So how do these overlays work? The overlay is nothing but this kind of shape where on one side it's darker and on one side it's brighter. You can scale it up to your preference. If you scale it up like this, for example, you will have a very dark section here and a very bright section here. If you scale it up more, it's going to be more balanced. If you move this down, it's going to be darker. That's the basic concept behind gradients. How do we do them for color correction? Well, it's fairly simple. You click here and you use overlay. That's why they're called overlays. And as you can see, it goes from something like this to something like this, with darker contrast on the bottom and brighter light on the top, which is really good compared to something like this. You see the difference? Which is getting already closer to what we had already here. And to improve this, we will not only use the overlay, that's just going to help. We also need to change in the adjustment section some settings. For example, in this case, I will raise the contrast a bit and the brightness. And as you can see, we are already getting closer to what we have here. But the face, as you can see, here is colder than here. Here it looks brighter, more saturated. And in fact, we have to reduce the saturation by around 10. And as you can see, it looks way better. But we will also reduce the temperature, which really helps when you have these kind of cold colors. And as you can see, it's already looking almost the same. I also like to add sharpness, as it sharpens the edges. As you can see, the end and all the lines in the shirt look defined now. And then to add the final touch to make the colors darker, for example, the hair, that here it's darker, and all the colors in general, we will use a filter that I've talked to you about, conifer cone. I usually put the strength around halfway with this, because if you exaggerate, as you can see, the atmosphere becomes really dark. Instead, like this, the atmosphere is brighter. And to finally adjust the brightness, we will play with the curves. Usually, to understand and explain stuff like this, which are curves, I usually explain it with extremes so that it's easy to understand. If you put this curve to the top, it becomes really bright. If you put it to the bottom, it becomes really dark. Therefore, if you tweak it a bit like this, you're going to get brighter points, darker points, and brighter points. However, for our color correction, we don't want something bright, but we want something dark. So what we will do is go dark, bright, dark. I will reduce the brightness here, enhance the dark. And as you can see, we have basically the same image. This is slightly darker because we went a bit farther with the lines. There we go. Now it looks better. And now let's move on to the other color correction, this one. Transform this image into this one. For this one, I've gone ahead and taken the exact same frame so that we can recreate the exact same color grade, unlike we did with this one, because these two instances were taken from the same video but in different moments, so the light was slightly different. Instead here it's completely the same, so we'll recreate it step by step. So we will restart with the overlay, just like this, and then I will simply add the conifer cone. And as you can see, I would have gone ahead and changed temperature and such, like this maybe, like we did on the other image, but there isn't really a reason because I think this one looks better with the face more red. So I'll go ahead and click undo on both the changes, and as you can see, the image is exactly the same. Here we don't even need to go into the adjustment panel to do anything. We could add some sharpened edges like this, which would make it look a bit better. But as you can see, the hair, I don't really like it. I think it's too bright if I sharpen the edges. Therefore, I prefer something like this. Here I have taken some of the backgrounds that I have in my editing pack, because we will edit them right now, as I want to show you how to change color of any background to anything. And to do this, we will use gradients once again. Again, everything that I'm using can be found in my editing pack, so don't worry about it. So how do we do this? We have, for example, this black and white background, okay? And we want to add a red/pink/orange overlay. How do we blend it correctly? Well, it depends on what we want. For example, if we want simply the lines of the background to be orange, we can click this overlay. Although the better way to do this is clicking on screen, which will create orange and here red lines. Meanwhile, if we want to give also color to the white, we can use the darken feature. The darken feature takes every color that is darker in this image and puts it on this one. In fact, as you can see, all the black lines are still here because they are darker than the red/orange background. Meanwhile, since the white is lighter than those colors, it is going to disappear. Once we have done that, we maybe don't like how it looks, we can zoom in so that there is more orange, or we could reduce the opacity so that you can notice it less, for example, something like this. Or you could also use a still color like an image of pink. In this case, for example, we can use a blue gradient for this other one. Again, you could use the darken feature to do something like this, although you can always play with all the features and find out which one works best. And you can reduce the opacity if you want, or you can zoom in because maybe you want in more blue like this or more black. You can decide. And then we move on to this kind of backgrounds, and I will also add a grid. For these kind of backgrounds, we can use, for example, overlay. And as you can see, we will have our gold background like this. I suggest zoom in and make it more yellow. I believe that these yellow backgrounds are absolutely beautiful. And then we move on to the grid, which I have used also in one of my introductory videos, where basically you can add the overlay, and as you can see, it becomes golden/dark. You can zoom in, zoom out, make it yellow, make it darker, whatever you want. And that's how you use overlay and gradients to color grade. If you want, you could also export the video. In this case, I only exported a frame, but it's the same with the video. And basically, you go on adjustment. Once the clip is exported, you can play with the color grading and add saturation, remove it, add some pink maybe, since the background is pink. You can maybe add some temperature, make it brighter, make it darker, whatever you like. And with this kind of knowledge, you can create infinite backgrounds which are completely custom and unique, because you can change all the colors with every gradient, everything. And in the next lesson, we will also explore the black and white features and overall just give a revise of the whole color grading.